Jack's in Derby. Jack, what do you reckon?
Well, my thoughts are that the cancelling exams last year were a mistake,
Yes.
and then the cancelling of them this year, it's equally a mistake. It should have happened, really. But it kind of seemed inevitable to us from the very start of this year that they were going to get cancelled, although Gavin Williamson said he wasn't going to do it. I don't think any teacher really had any doubt that they weren't going to happen. But I think that is a mistake.
What options do you think they had?
Well, I mean, it's difficult because every school has a very different context. They have different facilities. But I work at a state comp in Derby. Realistically, last year we could have held the exams for the year 11s. We don't do A-levels at our school. But point being, the school was empty. We only had a couple dozen key worker kids in. So therefore, there were every single classroom was empty, including the sports hall.
So logistically, with a decent bit of management, you could have done GCSEs because no other classes, no other year groups would have been in school. You could have had social distancing. You could have managed it in a way that allowed them to sit the exams. Yeah, and I get that. But here's the thing. So I'll give you plenty of time to come back at me, but I just want to get this out there because it might give everybody listening something to bite into. Because last year's different, Jack, oddly. So at first glance, I'd be nodding along with you, saying, crikey, you'd think they would have learned from last year's mistakes and they'd actually get the year, the GCSE year into the exam halls this year. But if you were sitting it last year, you'd only really missed the last term of schooling, and you don't do that much in the last term. It's largely revision and what have you. This year, the school year has been so completely disrupted. And I know for a fact, just by comparing notes with friends, that some children at schools that already bestowed an advantage have done infinitely, immeasurably, considerably better than schools that don't already bestow an advantage, whether they're fee-paying or selective or grammar schools or private schools, whatever it may be, or simply top-of-the-range comprehensive schools. They've moved further ahead of everybody else. So correct me if I'm wrong, but doing a universal exam this year would give even bigger boosts to the kids who already had a head start.
The trouble is...
Just pause a bit for that, because I think that's a brilliant point. And if it isn't, then you're going to have to take it on piece by piece.
No, but it's like, that is the point that is made. But that point was almost made last year anyway.
I don't want to talk about last year. Last year...
No. I'm just saying, but and it's a more valid point this year.
Yes,
you're absolutely right.
It's more valid this year.
Yeah, certainly more valid. But the trouble is that's almost the nature of schools and education in the first place. So, at our school, we've done fairly well rolling out live lessons and doing a provision of, over Microsoft Teams and what have you. So the students have got, a pretty regular timetable.
Yes.
And all teachers are providing lessons, etc. And anecdotally from other colleagues at other schools, I've heard that, other state comprehensive aren't doing what we're doing.
And that's why you can't do universal examining, isn't it?
But the trouble is, if you think about it, that's how schools work in general. There are good schools, there are bad schools. Certain state schools perform better. They have better management, they have better teachers,
yes.
They provide better education than other schools. There is a hierarchy of schooling within the country. And you're certainly right. There's no doubt that, fee-paying independent grammar schools, private schools, what have you, will be providing much better education, but realistically, is that any different to how education works in the first place?
No, you make a great point. So what would you do this year, very briefly? How if I put you in charge, and I'll share with you in a moment the comments of Sir John Coles, who's a former Director General at the Department of Education and has now resigned from the Ofqual Committee, who I think chimes with what you're telling me. But if I were to put you in charge, what would you do? How would you do it this summer?
Well, I mean, I think it's too late. Had I been in charge from the start, yes. I would have said we are going ahead with exams across the board.
Interesting.
I would have said, I would have shot down the Welsh and Scots in their cancelling of exams.
Right.
Because as soon as they cancelled them, it was inevitable we were going to cancel ours.
If I handed this in to you, you'd have thrown it back at me by now with the word clarity written across the top, underlined 6 times. Give me a clearer answer to what you would do differently, Jack.
I'd have just sat the exams and allowed the exam board to make adjustments to take into account the lack of education that students have had.
It's not often I undertake. It's not a reverse ferret or a screeching U-turn, but it is only 10:30, and I do wonder whether Jack actually has a point.